Welcome back, everyone. Some of the very first images the world saw of Luka Magnotta came from this network and one of our own Sun Media journalists. In 2007, the Toronto Sun's Joe Warmington interviewed the suspect. The interview came about after reports that Magnotta had a personal relationship with convicted killer Karla Homolka, a claim that the suspect denied in 2007. In those early hours of the story, Joe also foreshadowed that police would likely be combing through cold cases, something police have also confirmed is now part of their investigative efforts. Joe Warmington joins us now from Toronto. So, Joe, your reaction to the news that the manhunt is over?
Well, I mean, it's obviously good news, Krista, that they caught him. I'm not surprised at all that he was found in an internet cafe. That's the kind of stuff we talked about before, that he craved attention and he would want to be out in public, that kind of thing, and even looking at himself. So it's a good thing that this happened. Still pretty impressive how he was able to elude so many levels of security, Krista, for that amount of time and be found halfway across the world.
Oh, it's impressive indeed. I have said to our staff, the
impressive
suspect is no dummy.
Exactly, like in a sinister way.
Yes.
He had to jump. He utilized the media. I don't think we've seen anything like this. This guy is right out of a horror movie, allegedly. And if you look at everything that he's done, it's basically mimicking what you see in pop culture horror flicks, games, and he's playing everybody off each other. And even I got some weird emails that were coming from Europe. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were from him, and he's had his fun. Unfortunately, there's a victim in this, and that's the frightening part.
Indeed. Joe, when we spoke...
At least one victim.
At least one. Well, and this is where I'm going now with you. When we spoke last week, when the story first broke here on the Sun News Network, some 6 days ago or so, at that time you had the insights, even at that moment, to foreshadow the possibility of police looking at cold cases. That's something that police have subsequently confirmed. Do we have any details about that?
Well, I know that they will look at them. In Toronto, there's dozens and dozens of unsolved cases, and some of them are really weird ones. And every time a new lead comes up, they spend a lot of time on them in Toronto and in the OPP as well. And so they'll go through them, and if there's any matches or links, you can be sure that they'll get on the trail. Now, this is kind of routine. We don't have it narrowed down to any one at this time, but there's been some really strange cases in Toronto that have not been figured out. So, when something like this comes to light, they'll look at it. And there's so many kind of victims in this guy in the past, whether it be credit card fraud or identity fraud, or murder. So it's a really wide net, if you will.
And we heard from a former FBI director on this program a short time ago, Joe, who said very likely cold cases, even in Europe and other locations around the world, are now being re-examined. Joe, of course, it's hard to look into the future and know if you'll be covering this trial. Whether or not you are or not, what are you going to be looking for when indeed charges are brought against the suspect?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the first thing is to look at every movement that he made from the time he left that apartment in Montreal till being caught in Berlin. And, where was he the last few days? There's been some reports. They'll have to see if there's anything strange that occurred. Obviously, there's people that he met and talked to, and if there's anybody missing. And that's what they're doing right now. And as for the rest of it, I think that the very first thing that needs to happen, Krista, is that he gets a proper assessment from the psychiatrist. And that's the first step. And I don't know if we'll ever have a trial. It's hard to know.
Well, you're absolutely right. We spoke with Edward Greenspan at the outset of the broadcast, and he indeed confirms that one of the things he'll be looking for in the early going of the judicial process is indeed whether or not his counsel will seek that kind of psychiatric review and whether or not we might expect an insanity plea.
If anyone's going to pull one out, it's this situation. I mean, it's really something. When I talked to him back 5 years ago, I didn't envision anything like this, but I clearly understood that he was somebody desperately seeking attention. He said his life was spinning out of control. And, you know, we asked him if he needed medical help. We made phone calls about it. He said he had a therapist. I subsequently read, and we don't know whether it's true because he has so many identities and personalities online, but he said in one of the postings, Krista, that, you know, he had heard voices and had multiple personalities, things like that. So this is going the way of the doctor before it goes anywhere.
Joe, as always, we appreciate your insights.
All the best, Krista.
You too. Joe Warmington, he is, of course, the Toronto Sun columnist who first spoke with the suspect back in 2007, joining us live from Toronto here on Canada Live.